So here's another one in the list of rare and expensive horror games for the PlayStation 2. Haunting Ground, or Demento in Japan, was released in late April 2005 to a fairly mixed reception, with praise for the graphics, which were indeed impressive, as developers were starting to learn the capabilities of the PlayStation 2's hardware. Whilst the graphical fidelity was a plus, the game was marked down for its repetitive nature and tedious chases, especially in the latter part of the game. It was made by the same team who created Clock Tower 3, part of the Clock Tower series, and this game was considered a spiritual successor spin-off to it. As in Clock Tower 3, Haunting Ground featured a system where the character is stalked by an enemy off-screen, and repeated exposure to stressful situations will cause the character to panic. You can fight back, but it's pretty futile, so the best course of action is to run, hide, and wait for the threat to leave the area. Like Rule of Rose, Haunting Ground featured a teamwork mechanic whereby you work alongside a canine companion. Although it must be said that Huey is a lot better than Brown in the combat department, but is slightly lacking in the AI department, with him sometimes refusing to leave a room with what he deemed a threat inside it, leading to not being able to progress. Anyway, in this game you play as Fiona Belly, who, after a car accident, has been taken to a nearby castle, and inside said castle are plenty of residents who either wish her dead or wish to use her for nefarious deeds. The story is actually pretty straightforward in comparison to games like Kuon and Rule of Rose, which I've recently covered on the channel. Before we jump in, please be aware that there will be spoilers in this video for Haunting Ground, but with all that said, let's dive in. 18-year-old college student Fiona Belly is travelling in a car at night with her parents, Hugo and Ayla, and a car pulls up alongside them and forces them off the road, causing a crash. With Ayla dead from the crash, a mysterious man then stabs Hugo through the chest, killing him. Fiona passes out and is placed inside a cage in a dungeon, where a large deformed man chops up some meat and stares at her. He runs off and Fiona wakes up, confused as to what had happened to her and where she is. She vaguely remembers the car accident, and her memory is a little hazy. The cage is unlocked, so she leaves but is freaked out by what she sees in the dungeon. A dog growls and leaps at her, and picking up a dog's collar she sees the name Huey on it. Wrapped in nothing but a sheet, she emerges from the dungeon and into some grounds. She appears to have been taken to a castle somewhere. Needing to find out what's happening and to find a way out, she makes her way up the stairs, enters a bedroom, and is surprised by a woman who is in there with her. Her name is Daniella, and she's a bit strange, and she tells Fiona that she's gathered some clothes for her. Fiona asks where they are, and she rather strangely replies to someone else whilst looking at a portrait, saying, "Yes, master," and that they'll keep her there for a while. Having another flashback to the car crash, Fiona collapses and Daniella disappears. Someone's watching Fiona from behind the portrait as she gets changed. Creepy, but after she's changed, she leaves the room and explores the castle. She spots blood and has a minor freakout, and then she walks down a long corridor and comes face to face with the large man, who is named Debilitas. He's playing with a bisque doll, but when he notices Fiona, he throws the doll and goes after her instead. Having to retreat to the bedroom, she hides under the bed and waits for Debilitas to leave. After he's left, Fiona regains her composure and leaves, being careful not to make too much noise so as to not alert Debilitas to her whereabouts. Using a keyplate machine, she produces a keyplate and moves a stone golem out of the way, giving her access to another part of the castle. Just past a small garden, Fiona enters another room and hears a piano playing, and she spots a small key. Going to grab it, she is addressed by someone above her. Whoever it is says that he has wanted to show her something for quite some time. Pulling away a sheet, she sees a doll there which portrays a pregnant woman. The man describes it as beautiful. Fiona thinks it's grotesque, but the man says that is what Fiona will become in the future. The man says that Fiona will be his, and he then leaves. Taking the key, she heads back out into the small garden and hears something. She sees the shimmer of a bright blue light. Allowing it to touch her, though, provides her a pretty mean shock. Reaching a kitchen, Fiona is surprised by Debilitas, who has been lying in wait for her. Once again, she must escape, and running out of the kitchen, she trips on the stairs, hurting herself. Debilitas closes in on her, but she is saved, as Debilitas is told off by someone. This someone warns him to stop, so the simple-minded Debilitas, slightly gutted, leaves. A man approaches, offering his apologies, and introduces himself as Ricardo, the keeper of the castle. The castle is called Belly Castle, and Ricardo informs Fiona that since both her parents are dead, she is now the sole surviving heir of the castle. This news is too much for Fiona to take and she collapses. She is then taken to the guest bedroom again, and upon waking she hears a whimper coming from the gardens outside. She spots a dog there tied to a tree and in some distress. Going out to save the dog is the dog she encountered earlier on, Huey. Freeing him, he runs off, and back in the guest bedroom again, Fiona is confronted by Debilitas. Huey comes to Fiona's aid though, and she commands the dog to attack him. A slightly wounded Debilitas then runs off, and thanking Huey, Fiona now has a new friend to help her try and escape from the castle and the obvious dangers that it poses. Huey proves useful in obtaining hard-to-reach items that Fiona otherwise would not be able to obtain, like this broken marionette from atop a pile of rubble. Trying the main gate, unfortunately it's locked. It wouldn't be that easy. Back in the area with the kitchen, Fiona uses the broken marionette on a strange door. The door then opens, and stepping inside and commanding Huey to stay put, sat upon a pressure plate, she passes safely through a room, posing many pointy dangers. A phone rings and someone addresses her. Asking who it is, the man on the other end says she must pay attention, and that she must be wary of Ricardo. He speaks of her Azoth, and then the line goes dead. She's confronted by Debilitas once again, and she has to run. Giving him the slip, she can come across a strange sound coming from one of the rooms. Fiona, looking through the keyhole, sees Daniella sat on a chair, and quite bizarrely she is being questioned by Ricardo, who is eager to know where he is. Someone he refers to as the old man. Perhaps he's referring to the man Fiona just spoke to on the phone. Daniella does not answer him, so she is repeatedly slapped across the face by Ricardo. Ricardo stops and says that he won't let him touch her, referring to Fiona, and he says that the Azoth is his. Daniella then looks straight at Fiona and smiles. Fiona, extremely freaked out by what she just saw and having a panic attack, carries on and heads through a very creepy nursery and comes out on a balcony. Now, two things can happen here. Fiona sees a shiny object glistening on a part of the balcony and going to pick it up. The balcony collapses and she falls down with it. Or she can throw the bisque doll onto the balcony, leading to Debilitas going over to it, which leads to him going down with the balcony, giving Fiona at least a few minutes peace. She also finds a mechanism and kicks it, and this lowers a bridge which she uses to gain access to another part of the castle. She enters into an odd room with a sort of dial in the middle. Returning the blocks in this odd room to their original places reveals a hidden spiral staircase, and after aligning 3 lunar refractors, Fiona manages to get the door unlocked, and she eventually arrives in the chapel. Spotting a key, she grabs it, and once again is confronted by Debilitas. She can outright kill him by using various alchemical items she's found on the way and attacks from Huey, or she can force Debilitas to break supports on either side of the chapel, and this brings the chandelier down on top of him, but he is able to survive but is no longer a threat. Whatever she chooses to do, Fiona heads back up the spiral staircase and tries to use the key on the door in the odd room.
Dinner is served, miss. Dinner is served, miss. My creator said he made me the perfect woman. But I cannot taste or experience pleasure or feel pain. Thanks for the meal.
Feeling a bit ill after consuming Daniella's special soup, Fiona heads to the guest bedroom again in order to get some rest. However, while she's resting,
I am not complete.
With Daniella now armed with a shard of glass, Fiona must escape. Escaping her for now, Fiona heads back to the door in the odd room and enters. Another chase ensues, but as Daniella pursues Fiona, she catches a glimpse of her own reflection in a mirror and freaks out, screaming. Taking this opportunity to escape, walking down a flooded stairwell, Fiona now has left the castle and is in an old mansion. It appears to contain a greenhouse and also another strange room, with this one containing the statue of a three-headed serpent. Solving a puzzle regarding word searches and word plates, Fiona places 3 word plates into the mouths of the serpent with Huey's help, and doing this results in the serpent's flame going out and an ice pillar forming. Climbing the pillar, Fiona enters a library and receives a key, and she uses this key on a pair of doors, and these rooms are mirror images of one another. Spotting the differences and making the rooms match up, Fiona feels something move. She has lowered a bridge that she needed in order to escape that part of the mansion, but there are other things to do yet. Daniella, meanwhile, seems to be switching between hostile to docile, I just want to do my cleaning Daniella, and at one point she basically says that Fiona smells and gives Fiona a bottle of perfume which contains a particular scent, saying it's from the Lord of the Manor. Fiona also discovers a torture chamber with a kind of still alive corpse sat in a chair, and after pushing some pressure plates with Huey's help and finishing off the corpse, Fiona manages to grab a key from the now fully dead corpse's neck. Using that key, she enters the greenhouse. On the floor, she spots a mandragora. Also known as a mandrake, they come from a process which required a large amount of blood, whereby a fusion between plants and animals resulted in the mandragora. They have poisonous leaves and are considered magical plants. Oh, and they scream, very loudly. Reading a note nearby, she learns of a certain scent called Hebel, which was used in the creation of the mandragora. It's the scent in the perfume, so giving it to Huey, he sniffs out a white mandragora, a real one, and as expected, it shrieks. Hearing the shriek of the mandragora, Daniella is now fully hostile again, so Fiona must escape her. She does so and uses the new way out she'd unlocked a bit earlier. Fiona now finds herself in the cemetery grounds. Approaching a mausoleum, she spots a creature inside it, and she feeds it the white mandragora, and the creature allows her inside. In the mausoleum is another golem. Using more word plates, Fiona gets the golem to extinguish flames blocking her way, and after it's clear, she leaves the mausoleum and is now in a library. Arranging some bookcases allows her to reach a door otherwise inaccessible, and she plays a film reel that she'd picked up on her journey, and it's footage of herself. Someone's been filming Fiona's castle adventure. She sees a conversation between Daniella and Ricardo, and sees Ricardo messing with a few dials, and after taking note of them, she encounters Daniella being a creep again. She's talking about the Azoth too, and she calls it the essence of life and says, of woman. She then freaks out, malfunctions, who knows. Anyway, Fiona takes her chance to escape and does so. In another part of the castle, Fiona ascends a very strange staircase and sees more odd rooms. One is an operating theatre, another has a machine called a synthesizer, and a note by it talks about creating spiritually infused substances. There also appears to be a number of prison cells too. Fiona comes to the combination she saw on the film reel, and putting the correct combination in, this unlocks the door next to her. Fiona reaches another stairwell, but she can only head upwards, So ascending the stairs, she comes to a bridge which features a stone archer, which is triggered by pressure plates on the ground. If Fiona hits 3 plates, she's dead meat. With Huey's help, she is able to find her way across it safely and deactivates the trap. Using the door, Fiona comes out on the upper balcony of the library she was just in. Another door takes her to a room with some plinths. Like clockwork, Daniella has showed up. She's doing her weird thing again, and she continues to act strangely even when Huey is biting down on her arm. She says the words blood, flesh, and woman, and calls Fiona a vile creature who lures men into her filthy body because she's a precious little princess. After she's done licking shards of glass, Daniella tries once more to attack Fiona. Using Huey to keep Daniella occupied, Fiona aligns the plinths with the moonlight, and once Daniella moves into the circle in the middle of the room, something happens. The dome above her shatters, and she ends up being impaled by a huge shard of glass, and she is killed, smiling as she dies. Daniella is no more. Taking a key that she dropped, Fiona uses it and comes into contact with very small, odd, and grotesque creatures which, thankfully, can be killed with a few well-aimed kicks to the face. She spots another creepy sight. A homunculus just stood there chanting to itself. Huey doesn't like it much, and in a room at the end of a long hallway, Fiona finds a note written by Ricardo mentioning something called Prima Materia, and that at some point, Huey ran off with it. Sending Huey through a small hole, Fiona moves further on through the mansion, and she comes to a chamber.
Miss Fiona. Now, if you would please come with me.
No, I don't want to. Please let me be. I want to go home.
But Miss Fiona, you are home. This whole castle is all yours. So, Miss Fiona does not wish to stay at her castle. You miserable wench. You were given the greatest gift of all, and you don't even appreciate it. I can't believe the Azoth was wasted on you.
Attempting to escape Ricardo, who has a gun, Fiona sees where Huey ended up. After he removes the bar from the other side of the door, Fiona enters, and in the gardens, she finds the Prima Materia that Huey had run off with earlier on. She also finds the main entrance to the mansion, but it's locked. A carving on the door makes it clear that Fiona needs the Godstone that Ricardo spoke about in order to open this door by placing the Godstone on a set of scales. Going round and using the 4 synthesizer machines, Fiona is finally able to craft the red Godstone, places it on the scale, and the doors to the mansion open up. She leaves the mansion and is now about to enter Chaos Forest.
Huey! Huey!
With Huey injured, Fiona must make her way through the forest. If she goes the right way, she can hear Huey whimpering, and she can go over to comfort him. Promising she'll come back, she pushes on through the forest and ends up at a dead end.
Why are you doing this? What did I do?
You inherited your father's Azoth. That is what you did.
What Azoth? I don't even know what that is.
That Azoth belongs to us, Fiona. Don't you see? You are our child.
Stop! I am not your child. I know exactly who my parents are.
Fiona, we are, or rather I am, knowledge. I hold invaluable information from the dawn of time. I am a great alchemist. I will not die. I am Oriola's belly, and I... Look at me, Fiona. Look.
What?
just like your father, Ugo.
Daddy?
We are clones. We are clones. Ugo is no more. I am the original. With that, Azoth, I will finally be complete. You are about to give birth to me all over again.
So after coming to and depending on player action, Fiona wakes up in a cell. The mysterious man she spoke to on the phone back in the castle has left her a memo, and it explains that she was taken to a water tower by Ricardo. He also says that there's something somewhere in the basement of the tower, and that she can use that to open a path that will connect to the house where he resides. He signs off the memo and reveals that his name is Lorenzo. With the help of Huey, who grabs the key to the cell, Fiona leaves and is confronted by Ricardo. He's using alchemy to make himself appear invisible to Fiona, and she has no choice but to run from him. After losing him, she destroys one of the rusty pipes in the tunnel and retrieves a small wooden bridge that belongs to a diorama. Ascending the water tower, which is fairly weird in its design, and after being chased by Ricardo a few more times, Fiona makes it to the top. Working together with Huey, Fiona activates another contraption and a staircase reveals itself. Using it, she emerges and is on top of the water tower itself and places the wooden bridge she got onto the diorama. This ends up, just as Lorenzo said, activating a bridge with which Fiona can leave the water tower. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy because once again, she is confronted by Ricardo. Sending Huey into a hole, he waits at a window, and when Fiona lures Ricardo over to her, Huey jumps at him and he falls off the edge, and he is now dead. Descending, Fiona uses the bridge and crosses over and enters the House of Truth, where Lorenzo resides. It's a strange place that doesn't look very much like a house at all. Exploring the House of Truth, Fiona meets the frail Lorenzo. He knows all about Ricardo and Fiona's father Ugo, and them being clones. Truth is that the pair of them are clones of Lorenzo. He explains that Fiona's mother Ayla came along, stole Ugo's affection whilst she was there visiting the castle, and that is why Ricardo tracked down and killed Ugo. Between Ugo and Ricardo, it was Ugo that carried the Azoth within him. Lorenzo has been using ways to essentially keep himself alive and to keep himself young, using various means. Ugo was meant to be the carrier of the Azoth that Lorenzo needed, but then it was learned that Fiona carried within her the very same Azoth. Lorenzo has tricked her. He chases after Fiona, his obsession for the Azoth evidenced by his pursuit. She can either attack him with Huey's help, or just book it, where she discovers some explosives. Using a candlestick, she sets them alight and takes out Lorenzo and the wall with them. With Lorenzo seemingly dead, Fiona moves on down the now revealed passage. But it seems that Lorenzo is not dead, and he's still pursuing Fiona. He's desperate for the Azoth, that's for sure. Running once again, Fiona is in an area with a machine that crushes rocks. The machine gives her a useful tool. With Lorenzo still coming, she lures him onto the belt, gets Huey to keep him occupied, and starts the machine up again. Lorenzo is then crushed by the machinery, and it spits out a key. With him out the way, Fiona uses the key and comes face to face with a younger Lorenzo, who looks so strikingly similar to her father, Ugo, that for a moment she thinks it's him.
You're Azoth, Fiona, belongs to me.
This much younger Lorenzo, the form of the alchemist Aureolus Belli, isn't a permanent state. It's a temporary one thanks to the Azoth, but as a result, if Lorenzo wants the Azoth inside Fiona, he's going to have to act fast. Escaping this freak, Fiona discovers a wall and feels the birthmark on her back burning. The same mark appears on the wall, and a cane called the Cane of Caduceus is revealed to have been hidden in the wall. She takes it and comments that she feels like she's seen it somewhere before. This is known as the Staff of Hermes, and Caduceus is the basis for the astronomical symbol for the planet Mercury. Fiona and Huey eventually make it to another area which features a well containing lava. Using the cane, Fiona places it onto a plinth, and it powers the door up that Fiona can use to escape. But, of course, Lorenzo shows up again. A final showdown takes place between Lorenzo and Fiona, and using either the fans or just straight up knocking into him, Fiona manages to push Lorenzo into the lava. Unfortunately, this has resulted in the House of Truth starting to crumble and fall apart, so Fiona has to escape. But like most villains in horror stories, yep, Lorenzo still is not dead. He really wants that Azoth, so even as a flaming skeleton, he's still pursuing poor Fiona. Avoiding the tremors, Fiona makes it to the exit, and cornered by Lorenzo, he dies for good this time. Being able to leave now, Fiona does so and she returns to the castle. Using the castle key, Fiona struggles to get the key into the lock. Eventually managing to unlock the large doors to escape, if Debilitas survived his and Fiona's fight in the chapel, he'll come outside but will be peaceful and will let them leave. He then tends to the gardens of the castle. Fiona and Huey then leave and escape the castle in the woods, and the game then ends. So that was ending A, considered the best ending to the game. There are actually 3 alternate endings to this game based on player action throughout it. So ending B is actually obtained through killing Debilitas in the chapel fight. That way he won't appear in this cutscene. Ending B is actually the very same as ending A minus Debilitas. I didn't get that particular ending in my run because I didn't want to play through the entire game again just for a few seconds of footage. Ending C is obtained through defeating the game once. Starting a new game, Fiona needs to not kill Debilitas, and he'll give her the smudged key in his hut. Going to the bathroom, Fiona will find the castle key which in the first playthrough she obtained at the end of the game. She can then use the key to leave the castle with Huey early, therefore avoiding Daniella and Riccardo and Lorenzo's nonsense. Lorenzo as a result sees Fiona leaving the castle and is so desperate for the Azoth that he falls down the stairs and presumably dies. Considered the absolute worst ending in the game, ending D involves Fiona having a really bad relationship with Huey. She must scold, abuse, and neglect him. Huey will then die in the forest after being shot by Riccardo. After their encounter here, Fiona is taken by Riccardo and later placed inside a glass box, and as Huey is dead and will not save her, she is doomed. Later on, she is sat in a chair in a bedroom, and Riccardo strokes her hair and her face and walks away. It's revealed that Fiona is pregnant. She smiles slightly and laughs uncontrollably, with her possibly having lost her mind. And that is all the endings in the game, and that's the storyline itself, but we still have some stuff left to clear up. So what is the Azoth that is mentioned so many times in this story? Well, as we heard, it's life essence. In a letter from Lorenzo, he mentions the 3 things that make up Azoth: salt, sulfur, but the most important of these things was mercury. Alchemists believe mercury to be the first principle of all metals, which leads us to prima materia. Prima materia means prime matter, also known by some as the Philosopher's Stone. It's a mythic alchemical substance that is capable of turning metals such as mercury into gold or silver. The Philosopher's Stone is also thought by alchemists to be the substance that can create an elixir that can rejuvenate and that can bring about immortality. That elixir just so happened to be inside Fiona's body. But where did the Azoth inside Fiona come from? Let's find out. The Aureolus Lorenzo Belli we see in the game is not the original. It's important to establish that the Lorenzo we see came 13 generations after the original Aureolus Belli. The Azoth had been passed from clone to clone, generation after generation, in order for Areolus to live. Forever, essentially. When Lorenzo created his clones, he created Hugo first and then the Azoth passed to him, but he ran off with the Azoth after he fell in love with Ayla. It was then that he created Ricardo, but what remained of the Azoth wasn't potent enough, so Ricardo was incomplete. Ricardo, seen as a failure by Lorenzo, would of course rebel against him and try to obtain the Azoth himself, as he too wanted immortality. It's key to note that every human contains Azoth within them. However, the Azoth of Aureolus Belli is special due to his powers and his knowledge of alchemy. He would also try and extract Azoth from the blood of animals, and that is why Huey was there, as he was captured by Ricardo, and this was because Ricardo was aging abnormally fast due to him being incomplete. Huey was about to be drained of his Azoth before Fiona saved him. Ricardo did have some of the previously mentioned primer materia, but as mentioned, Huey had grabbed it and ran off with it at some point before the story took place. When he found out about Fiona, since the Azoth Hugo had was passed to her through conception, and she contained within her the special Azoth that he required, he did not need the primer materia anymore. As we saw, Lorenzo did everything he could to sabotage Ricardo's attempts, and used Daniella to help him, and he would watch her too, as we saw from the camera footage on the film reel. Daniella would help by unlocking the door of the cage at the start of the game, and that wasn't until she became jealous of Fiona and wanted to kill her. But more on Daniella shortly. Ricardo, as we saw, had a pretty twisted method of obtaining the Azoth. He wanted to impregnate Fiona, who was essentially his niece, and she would birth a child with the Azoth inside it, and this child would be a copy of Ricardo and not a copy of Lorenzo or Areolus. He would only be able to achieve this if players obtained ending D. The Azoth is very potent, and this is seen through the luminescence. They are tiny creatures that respond to the ethereal energies from the Azoth. They give a shock to someone who is infused with the Azoth, and depending how potent the Azoth is within them, the larger the shock. The luminescence will relentlessly follow the source of the Azoth, but will die after a few minutes. Finally, Fiona bore on her body a birthmark, and that mark was the mark or the symbol of Azoth. So Debilitas is a homunculus who was created by Ricardo and was created from the placenta of a dog. He is fully grown but deformed and has the mind of a child and plays with dolls. His mind is so underdeveloped that he thinks Fiona is a doll at times, and if he grabs her, he will squeeze her so hard that he kills her. He's not murderous, but he's playful, and that playfulness is aggressive, as he doesn't know how strong he is or what he's doing. The other versions of the homunculus are the small failed subjects, and the groaning homunculus around the mansion. Debilitas followed the orders of Ricardo and, for example, captured Huey after he was annoying Ricardo by doing things such as stealing the primer materia. In his shack, Debilitas has an altar, and this could be linked to the statue in the chapel. He potentially worships it, and after the fight with Fiona, if she does not kill him, he sees her as a godly figure, and therefore he is no longer hostile towards her after this. Daniella was brainwashed into believing that she was a puppet or a doll, and Lorenzo's hope was that she would be able to bear him a child that he would contain the Azoth that he needed in order to live on. However, Lorenzo discovered that she was infertile, as did Ricardo, so she simply became surplus to requirements and just served as a maid instead. She claims she was created by Lorenzo to be the perfect woman, and she then developed an obsession with becoming complete. She also didn't think she would be perfect until she could become a mother. This is likely why she was hellbent on killing Fiona. She tried to drug her with the soup. She is seen preparing this soup at some point in the game, and Fiona notes that there's human hair in it, likely Fiona's hair, and then we see Daniella trying the soup, stating that she's still not complete as she cannot smell or taste it. I guess she's just trying many ways to become complete, her desperation culminating in the most drastic action being taken. It seems Daniella wanted to cut Fiona open and obtain the Azoth inside her. It's why she so relentlessly pursues her, for the Azoth. Daniella does not possess knowledge of alchemy or how to extract Azoth, which is why she thought she could simply cut Fiona open in order to access it. Or it could be that as she hovers her hand over Fiona's womb, she wants to cut that out of her, thinking that with her womb, she can have a child. I know it's balmy, but it's peak Capcom survival horror. Daniella could also have amnesia, as she seems not to remember anything from her past, and she possibly has anhedonia, as she cannot feel pleasure or pain at all. And that's pretty much it for the lore and story of Haunting Ground. I enjoyed this game, a little bit frustrating in places due to some characteristically clunky combat, but the story was solid and I had an overall decent time with the game. I'd say check this out for yourself, but it's quite a rare one to find for a decent price, so you probably end up having to play it on an emulator. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories from rare older games, I have explained the stories from both Kuon and Rule of Rose, and you can find links to those videos on the end card of this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this one and subscribe if you aren't already, and leave your thoughts down below. But for now, take care and I will see you in the next one.